and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name is Ben Jackson and I am your host once again this week. And as always, I'm joined by Scott and Joris. Guys, how are you doing this evening?
Hi guys, hello there everybody.
Very tired, but apart from that, all good. Happy days.
Yeah, I'm good. Good thing that you're tired when we have so much to talk about, though. A lot happened this week. There's plenty to dive into from the weekend's action. Just a quick little score roundup. Charleroi drew 1-1 with Club Brugge on Friday. Genk beat Mechelen 2-1. Standard Liège lost 2-1 at home to Westerlo. Deinze drew 1-1 with Anderlecht. Antwerp technically on paper won 5-0 against Beerschot. There's so much to talk about that. We could always do a whole episode on that game because it was the most ridiculous thing that happened. Union beat Kortrijk 3-0. Ghent beat Leuven 3-0 and Cercle Bruges drew 1-1 with St. Truiden. Well, we could just jump straight to the Antwerp derby. We will do a bit of chronological ordering instead. So you're going to have to stick around for that one. We'll start with Charleroi against Club Bruges. Club leaving it late, guys, to get the equaliser in this. Probably from kind of memory watching this one, I think they probably did deserve to score an equaliser. I think even down to 10 men, they had plenty of chances. We're putting a lot of pressure on Charleroi. Interested to hear what you guys think of Onyedika's red card. Do you think it was a red card? Do you think it was... There's been worse challengers that haven't been given red cards other than been given yellows? In the end, Van Aken saves him after Guegon had opened the scoring just into the second half. So everything kind of happened in the second half in this one. But Kone did make some fantastic saves as well. I think he had a really, really strong game in goal. But at the end of the day, I think Club kind of responded like, I think they're unsure whether to feel it as a 0.1 or 3 points lost because they kind of had enough chances to win the game even when they were kind of a man down.
2 points lost, of course, is what Ben means there. Indeed. Let's see. I'll first go on Charleroi. Indeed, I wanted to give a shout out to Kone as well. I think that's my opinion, but my 2 cents so far more consistent than Coffee, and he might actually be the better choice. I might be upsetting our host here. Well, he's starting the season strong anyway, and this game in particular, he was really he did really well. That actually goes for both goalkeepers in this game as well. I'll touch on that in a little while as well. But in Charleroi, in results, dropping off a little bit with an upfront issue, I guess, despite a very good goal that was scored. But yeah, in the end, 2 draws against Anderlecht and Club Brugge consecutively, so no losses in those games. I guess that's quite all right. They would have signed up for that before those games, most likely. Although I probably will feel they should have won this game. But that also goes for their opponents, probably. So indeed, I guess ultimately a draw is a fair result because Charleroi, after the red card from Onyedika, I'll touch on that in a bit as well. But they did fail to score in especially Dabach against Mignolet. He was denied a few times. Yeah, we know he's not the most prolific striker, but yeah, that's. He probably should have scored at least one of them, and then most likely, despite Club Brugge's best efforts, the game would have been done and dusted. But definitely, so they will feel like 2 lost points, I guess. But the dropping off is also mainly in the points they hold there. They're not really their level of play is generally quite well. Okay, you're going to give away some chances against the Club Brugge side. That's normal as well, of course, but. Yeah, ultimately a bit sour, of course, for them as well, that it was a deflected shot, even though it was a rocket. It seemed like a rocket, that it was a deflection that beat Kone in the end. I guess that's also the only way that Kone could be beaten in this game. That's maybe an exaggeration of his game. I'll have to admit, it's not that he needed to do miraculous saves, but he did his job well. On Club Brugge then, before going to the red card discussion, Mignolet, indeed, actually having a good game as well and keeping them in the game. This time, it has. I'm the first one to critique him at times, but in this game specifically, he really saved the point for them as well. And ultimately, Club Brugge, they're actually playing quite well, but they have won less than 50% of their games so far as well, due to a lack of efficiency. And we've heard that story before in the last few seasons. So. I mean, there's nothing to worry about yet, I guess, but the results will need to come quite quickly, and there's quite some pressure on the fixture they will have this week, the European fixture as well, on Haien. Also a bit of a stop-start in results as well so far, starting with only 1 point after 3 games. Then they got it 4 wins in a row. Now two games again, only 1 point that they get out of it. So there's no consistency yet, at least in the points haul. Yeah, and on your DK red card, I do think it is one, regardless of whatever. The other you could say, like Ben mentioned, maybe other files also deserve the reds. In that case, well, yes, then these other files deserve the reds. It doesn't mean that this one wasn't one, but they do feel like, I think it reminded me a little bit. It's been a while, but I think the red card of Kamar Lawrence against Eup a few seasons back, where there was also some controversy, but it's 2 feet flying. I think that one was a bit worse than this one, though. That to not make the complete comparison, but just the 2 feet of the ground in general already is like, it's always well close to red for me. And I mean, because of that, I know people are saying the intentions were not bad. He wanted to play the ball, I guess so, but I feel like the 2 feet thing does kind of relegate that argument, the divided argument of the going for the ball with intentions. I don't know what you guys are thinking about it, but to me, that's a fair red card. That might mean that there should be more red cards though in the goal.
Yeah, I can kind of understand why club feel a little bit hard done by with the red card. I do think it was a red as well. At the end of the day, it's a reckless challenge. As Joris was saying, 2 feet off the ground at one point, you can never be certain of, your contact or where that's going to land. And those sorts of challenges, just to the letter of the law, a lot of referees now just a red, on principle because of the lack of control there, even though there wasn't a great deal of contact in the end. But I think on balance, I can totally see why it was a red. I think the story of this game was really one where club, it's a point gain for them, really. They started quite well. They were pretty decent in the first half. But again, Joris highlighted this problem about not being able to score when they're on top in games, and it is becoming a bit of a feature of their play. It's not enough to be on top for, say, 60 minutes in a game and necessarily expect to win it anymore. It's a cliche, of course, but you have to take your chances, especially when you're on top. Charleroi, on the other hand, generally were very good, particularly in the second half. They just couldn't get the killer second, which obviously would have killed the game, and they are understandably a bit disappointed about that, not quite being able to hold on. But it's the 1-0 thing as well. It doesn't matter how much in or out of a game you are. At 1-0, you've always still got a chance. And Hans van Aken, who actually had a really good game, even the scout in his goal, pops up and gets the point at the death. And he's been actually involved in pretty much all of the good stuff that they have been doing in recent weeks, even when they haven't been picking up points, when they should have arguably been getting something. He's on quite a good run of form at the moment. He often gets the plaudits, kind of fairly consistently through a season, but I think over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I think he probably deserves a little special mention for standing out a little bit in terms of producing the level that Nicky Hayen's looking for, and the level that other players need to pull themselves up to. The Mill talking about how well balanced they were and how well organised. So he's pleased, if not a little frustrated. Nicky Hayen, I thought, wanted to highlight the fact that they can't kill games, and he said, look, if we play with the intensity that we did in the first half through the majority of a game, not for, say, 50, 60 minutes, then most weeks we will win a game no matter who we're playing. And I think he's probably right about that. If the intensity drops, then, you're going to have a problem. So he needs to find a solution to this, particularly when they play better oppositions, because as Joris was saying, their schedule is pretty chocker. They've got Sturm Graz away next. which won't be an easy game, by the way, because although that seems the most straightforward game, arguably in paper, they're sitting at the top of the table just now. They've had a very decent start to their own domestic campaign in Austria. Then they've got Union Saint-Gilloise and Westerlo, neither of whom are pushovers. Then it's AC Milan and Anderlecht. So, that cry for up the intensity has never been more needed.
No, you mentioned that Sturm Graz game, Scott, and I feel like it is that one, isn't it? You look at all the kind of Champions League games they've got, that's the one they have to win. But yeah, defending Austrian champions, they are going to be missing their best, or one of their best players, so one of the Slovenian midfielders. It's like Jon Gorenks Dakvanovic or something like that. I can't remember the second part of his name, but he's out for 10 weeks, which is a massive boost for club. They really do need to win that one after dropping that game against Dortmund, even though, again, they played really well in that Dortmund game. Like, that was one of their better performances of the season. So if they can play like that for 90 minutes and just put the ball in the net, they should be okay. They should be able to get a win over a Graz side that lost to a Brest team that obviously lost loads of their good players. So, yeah, I'm actually quite looking forward to that game. It feels like there's a lot riding on it. But defeat could be, quite costly when you look at who else they've got to play in that competition, including your own team as well, Scott, which is coming up in a couple of months' time, which should be a good one. One side that doesn't have to deal with European football at the moment is Genk. Something you mentioned in the pre-season preview was, would that benefit the like of a Torsten Fink being able to implement his style? I'm not sure we had Ortun de Wolf as being the king of the assists for Genk within that kind of concept. No idea what he was doing with that. Like, I've watched it like so many times. I just can't work it out. Cannot work it out at all. But O's now got a couple of goals in quick succession, looking pretty decent off the bench. I feel like we've had this conversation before where you have like kind of players coming off the bench that are doing really well. Tolu's obviously still scoring as well, so it's kind of like the question's going to start coming, like, who's the starting striker? Is O happy coming off the bench? Yeah, that remains to be seen. For Mechelen, it'll just be a massive kick in the teeth, won't it? And it's a nice way for De Wolf to kind of celebrate that random Belgian inclusion in the kind of random squad as well. I'm sure he'll really enjoy that. But Joris, I guess another win in a nice dramatic fashion, but very much thanks to the goalkeeper in this one.
Very much did not enjoy this game. That's definitely the worst game of the season. Well, I'm not alone in that as well. I want to say it anyway, but Fink also already said it himself, I believe. Also, not only the worst game of them, but also Mechelen being the best opponent they've faced so far, at least in a game-to-game basis, of course. Of course, Club Brugge is going to be the better opponent, for example. But during the game, the Mechelen have really posed a lot of issues to Genk. Somehow, like Schoofs mentioned it in his post-match interview, somehow there seems to be something in this. I don't believe in these things, but like in Mechelen coming to Genk, the only outcome is a loss. The last 13 times Mechelen came to Genk, they lost. So, regardless of how they played, I believe the last X times, let's say 4, maybe even like 4 times they conceded 4 as well. This time that didn't happen, at least, and I don't know how they would have, because they didn't give away that many chances. There were a few big ones, but just not a good game from Genk. And not only that, I'll also give the praises to Hazi as well. Even another one where I'm usually not the last one to critique, but in this game at least he got his balls perfectly fine, together with a little bit of a good fighting spirit from Mechelen's side and a lack of it a little bit from Genk. Maybe they took it a bit too. They were a bit too certain that they would win this game. Ultimately, they won, but I still don't really know how as well. And even with a draw, that would already be like. You can never say it's a good point, I guess, in a home game, but but nonetheless, I would have taken it by that time already. Genk seem to be struggling when opponents. Free tips to anyone from inside other clubs listening, but seems to be struggling when the opponents are really keeping the options wide, the open, so on the wide, on the sidelines open, keep the play wide. Definitely, that was clearly visible. Mechelen created quite a few chances that were. Yeah, they were a bit unlucky, or Van Comrie actually had a good save. He also had gifted them the goal as well. Yeah, in the previous game, we were talking about two goalkeepers performing well. Here, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I guess Van Comrie himself, without he should have saved that goal, but he had already saved a few before as well that could have gone in otherwise. There are also a few final balls that just didn't finish right for Mechelen, and just a few chances they should have done better anyways. The Ramand chance, for example, like even the one-on-one, yes, maybe Ramand can miss it, but then Schoofs had a rebound, and okay, there are a few Genk defenders still, but not really close to goal. Actually, it's more or less of an open goal, and like he fires it wide, and not just like narrowly wide, but far wide. Yeah, that efficiency, the keyword. I hear Scott's coming already about it again as well. But that's rightfully so. On Genk as well, then I'm very happy that they won this game, not because because you have to win those games that you don't play well as well. That's always a good sign. But also, like they now have scored 8 of their 20 goals, so 40% in the last 15 minutes of the game. So that's a complete difference from what we've seen last year. In the last 2 years, where they conceded quite often in the final minutes. Now it looks like they easily could have conceded in this game. To be fair, like it not necessarily based on this game only, but in this game it was a bit of luck anyways. But in other games we seem to, it's not the first time already they score in the stoppage time as well to pull it over the line. So that's something we missed and needed from as a Genk fan. I think since we still have a little bit of a trauma on stoppage time as well, I think finally these things are turning around a bit. I guess I'll leave many things to Scott as well, for Michel as well. But the one thing, of course, still want to highlight as well, more injuries, because it touches on both sides actually, but especially on Michel, like more injuries again. Raman and Cuesta off from the same challenge, I think, from Cuesta on him. Cuesta could hold it on a little bit longer, but Raman had to be subbed off quite early on. And then Van den Ende also got off injured. So I think they will be happy that Foulon will be back, should be back next game at least. So that they still have the same amount of options, but it's still very thin at the back there. But and just on the Wolf, the only thing is, of course, I feel a bit sorry for him. It's not his fault. It is a bit funny, but it's not his fault. Like, he got called up for the pre-selection of the Red Devils, and the club is so proud to announce it. And then the game after that, whatever that was happened. Yeah, it's an unfortunate timing. It's a comical timing. It's not against him himself. He actually had a okay game as well before that. The penalty couldn't do much about, of course, and he saved a few, not many, but a few of the things he needed to save. That killed his game as well, I fear.
Yeah, and it killed the game for Mechelen as well, of course. Virtually last touch of the ball. Just bizarre. I mean, see if he comes out and he just hoofs it and clears it, then I get what's going on there. But he comes out and I think it's a rush of blood to the head. I don't think he knows what he's doing, and before he knows, he's caught. It was just kind of wild, and nobody really saw that coming. In a game in which they actually played pretty well, they just couldn't kill it, as Joris was saying. Hugely frustrating for them. We were just talking about another side who couldn't kill their game, and here's another side, arguably in an even more dominant position in terms of the chances they created. And and in this case it being even worse because they threw it away at the death there. The injury list is piling up as well for Mechlin, as Joris was saying. That'll be another source of irritation for Hazy, because particularly his back line, which, seems to be slightly cursed in a way, just he can't really get a properly settled back line there at all. And although everybody's getting a bit of game time, which is a positive thing, you want as settled a back line as possible, and it just seems to kind of change, it's revolving doors there at the moment, really frustrating. From a Genk perspective, lacking energy, something that Torsten Fink highlighted, and I thought it was really honest of him to say, look, we got this win today because of the previous 6 wins, that consistency, and sometimes you get a little bit of luck, you create your own luck by playing well, which obviously they didn't do this weekend, but sometimes winning ugly is obviously the mark of a side who are going to do well, and on a run of form like the one they're currently on, it's far too early obviously to read anything into that, but 7 wins out of 7 is extremely impressive form, and there will be something in terms of the resilience of that side that they can take out of that. I'm sure there'll be some honest conversations about the performance not being up to the levels that they would like, particularly in an offensive sense. I mean, considering how many opportunities they've been creating in recent weeks, there was quite a drop off. It wasn't really bad, but in context, I didn't think it was great, and it was a bit of a strange game from their perspective. So there'll be a bit of relief to dig that out in the end, I think.
Absolutely, and it's those sort of results come the end of the season that you look back on potentially and think, oh, that was a key one. But then the points get halved, so maybe not, I don't know. You count it's 1.5 points, so it's kind of useful. Let's go to the side that are finally trying to kind of slip a little bit down the table in Standard Liège. They actually created a lot more in this game than they have for a long time. Took a Zakiri penalty for them to actually score, and the man we mentioned last week is potentially coming into some form, Matija Frigan, with a brace. I think, we can't ignore that. I think maybe this is the start of him taking the kind of the mantle of the striker that they need this season and running with it. And even Sinan Bolat made a couple of saves, still not having to jump too much or not wanting to jump too much, but he made a couple of saves. So even he had a reasonable game, but a big win, I think, for Westerlo in a sense of just kind of, we spoke about them playing well but not getting the 3 points, but now they've grabbed 3 points. They've kind of stopped a little bit of a jutter that they had, and this is a sort of game that if they don't want to be in the situation they were in last season, where they were kind of coming to the end of the season and having to draw with Genk and not play for the last 5 minutes of the game, they need to win these so they're kind of solidly in that kind of playoff 2 mix. So a good result for them. For Standard, better offensively, but not getting the 3 points. And they've got that weird situation, haven't they, guys, where they're the best defence in the league, but the worst attack at the same time. And it's quite hilariously concerning if you're a Standard fan, because it doesn't make for great entertainment either way.
Well, you highlighted the elephant in the room from Standard's perspective there, and that's the fact that they've only scored 5 goals, which is 1 less than sides down at the bottom doing a bit worse than them. So if they don't find a solution to that, or a halfway house somewhere in there, then they definitely are going to get sucked into something they don't want to. Obviously, Zakiri's come in, and Eckhart Deinze, who they're hoping will be the solution offensively to some of the link-up play. We'll see whether that's the case or not. They started strongly and they finished strongly, and I don't know, it's kind of typical of Standard these days that, they take the lead and then within 60 seconds of doing that, they kind of concede, and in a lot of ways that just says so much about them really at the moment. I think Lecco was pleased with generally their overall contribution. I think, he did say as much afterwards. The reality is, though, they were kind of caught twice on the counter, which I think they need to learn from. There's no doubt about that. Although playing against any side that is basically playing a low block against you is always going to be a challenge, but it's going to be a particular challenge for a Standard side who are struggling to score. So to throw away the advantage, which they got first so quickly, is something that I'm sure they will talk about. Timmy Simons, on the other hand, delighted with the fact that they're still producing good output levels, good efficiency, our favourite weekly word again, there it is, and actually commenting specifically on being quite proud of the kind of growing maturity in his young squad, which he's been talking a lot about this season actually, and I think he's right to, because there's a consistency in there now. Well, it's been there pretty much since the start of the season, give or take, minor little drops in games that is still worthy of comment, because it's still there, because it's that ultimately got them over the line this weekend, because on another weekend, Standard could have still grabbed a point because of their strong finish. So shooting practice and lots of it on the cards at Standard training this week.
Out of those 5 goals, of course, 3 of them are even penalties as well. So that's even only 2 goals out of open play so far. Yeah, that's bad. I don't want to open the can of worms with a penalty here as well, because ultimately it didn't make a difference. But I feel like that was not one as well. But I won't go much further than that. But yeah, first home loss for Standard, and also the first goals against they got at home this season. That in itself is quite positive, I guess, even though the stat itself is negative for this time around. But yeah, just they indeed need some firing power still. And yeah, agree with Scott's point about counterattacks, because it was not only on the goals that they got caught out. Sayat Manej also did one turn on his own half in midfield, and then he had a boulevard in front of him where he ultimately shot. But luckily Standard defenders were a bit faster to come tracking back still. But that was definitely something that they will need to work on as well. Epolo, again, also in this game, I keep repeating it every week. Some weird things as well, but also some good saves at the same time. So, I still don't really know what to make of it. So I guess that will hopefully for them not bite them in Bolombards later on the season as well to further complicates things for them, because indeed they're sliding down a little bit. But okay, everything is so close still at that part of the classification. Yeah, it's difficult to really make big predictions. I think last week or 2 weeks ago, I was saying I could see them moving up the table a bit. Now it's like already, I guess it's just a bit topsy-turvy in this Standard case, like last 2 seasons, I guess. On Westerlo, of course, finally breaking that bad streak. They were on 5 games without a win, and finally they got one. And you see it's a good example what one win can bring, because with that win, they were at that time temporarily second to get next to Club Brugge and Anderlecht. That last part stayed, of course, and ultimately it's shared 4th spots that they've got. But definitely one win after losing 5 in a row, not getting many points in these 5 games, getting only 2 points out of 5 games, and you already moving up a lot of spots in the table. Also, weirdly enough, they're quite good against Standard lately. They're now 7 games unbeaten in their head-to-head fixtures. So but nonetheless, it's a lot of draws in there. So there was the first win in Sclessin since 2015, if I'm not mistaken. So based on the previous stat, I would have thought maybe that was last season or 2 seasons ago, but no, these were draws. I just want to also highlight Vuskovic, who clearly is actually a 10 or a real playmaker when you look at that second goal, because he just ran through the defense. Again, the counter, I guess, but still some good moves there as well, and a well-timed pass for Frigan, who also scored in. Is he lighting it up a little bit last season? It's looking better, and if he can do so, it's a lot of their season might hinge on that. If he can produce the goods a bit more, he's doing so far in his first 9 games, they might have a good season. They are having an okay season anyway. I don't think they will have to worry at any point. But again, rewind this 1 minute back and you hear me saying you can't say much yet because everything is so close around this part of the classification, and that's still true, of course. But this win was well needed, and the main thing is, of course, they have been playing well, even when they were not getting many points, and now it paid off once again.
It's fun. You kind of hit the nail on the head, and it's something I've been like kind of thinking about over the weekend. Is like kind of what can we take away from 9 games so far, in that sense of, is it too early to talk about that? Is it too not? But I do think with some teams like Standard, where we're like, yeah, we expect them to struggle, we can kind of be like, right, the beginning was just weird, and it's still weird. Like you just look across that line, it's very symmetrical: 3-3-3 and 5-5 in terms of 3 draws, 3 losses, 3 wins, 5 goals scored, 5 goals conceded. Like, it's a bit weird. I don't think I've ever seen that. I can't remember seeing that many often times in any league in kind of football after 9 games. It's strange, but them siding isn't a surprise. But them same with Westerlo, you're like, they may have been sliding a bit, but you're like, actually, I think their team's pretty all right. Like, they'll be okay. Like, where they're going to be. I think it's hard because usually you think after kind of 10 games, you have a little bit better of an idea of where everyone's going to be. But it is just so bunched up, apart from one team, that it's kind of really hard to tell, and people are just kind of jumping up. Let's go to Deinze, another side that I was talking about last week, saying I think they need to start picking up. It sounds stupid, like they need to start picking up points. Obviously, they need to start picking up points, but it's just, I felt like they needed to kind of reverse things a little bit, get like a big performance or a big kind of point, I guess you could say, against a team that's not fancied. They've done that against Anderlecht. They probably could have scored more. Koosman's made a couple of really, really good saves. Still their best player this season. Adozi's goal was good. Everyone's been calling for him to play, so they can kind of tip that one. But I think Schiedler's goal was really, really nice. The finish was just absolutely... There's been a couple of rockets this week, and that was one of them. And it was actually quite a nice play. I think the pass from... Was it Nsimba with the pass? I thought it was a really nice kind of... You could see the run, and you're like, that's a pass I could probably make on FIFA because I'm on the camera miles behind it. But when you're actually in the moment, to see that pass and make the pass are 2 different things. And that was a really, really nice finish. So I was quite surprised that he started up front, but he got a nice finish and a nice goal. So fair play to him. Verrip's back in goal, so back to the first choice keeper from the first couple of games. Made a couple of decent saves as well. More frustration for Anderlecht, isn't it? It's just David Hubert, he's still there, but how much longer can he be there if the performances don't pick up? They need someone in there who can clearly get more out of them than they're getting at the moment. And Brian Reamer's probably sat at home like, I told you so.
He probably is, and I wouldn't blame him. Funny the way things work out, actually. Dender, thoroughly decent this weekend. Really decent performance. Pleasing to see them take the game to Anderlecht, actually. I thought, particularly at home, really good crowd in as well. Anyone would have thought a so-called big beast was in town, and sure enough there was. Really, really full house there. Aurelian Schadler, Ben was talking about, big shout out to him. He had a really good game, and even before his goal, what a header that was from Koosman's save, which comes off the post ultimately in the end, but the header is superb, the save is, and then, the post does the rest. But he looks like a real handful and could contribute quite a lot. And we've already been quite complimentary about Dender's front line already this season, so he looks like he's going to be a good addition there. And I think Vincent Everard's obviously hoping that he can push the other two to kind of stay at a good level, and give him that nice headache of being able to interchange a little bit. But I can understand why he went with Schadler, because physically he's a bit of a handful as well, and he certainly was this weekend for Anderlecht. So I think he was the right choice. Anderlecht, we know about their efficiency issues. We know about the offensiveness not being at the level that it should be. Winless in 5 domestically, and they've only scored 3 goals in 1 game this season. So it's painful.
Well, on Dender, okay, one negative is actually not necessarily... Well, it is a negative, but it doesn't matter in the bigger picture, I guess, for them. Still winless against Anderlecht in history in the first division. But, okay, I guess they needed this point. They more or less deserved this point, although Anderlecht could definitely claim the victory because of their missed chances, especially in the second half. But... nonetheless, a well-deserved point, I guess, for the fighting spirits in Scheidler. Indeed, one first start. I think he played only 6 minutes before this, so that was impressive. Also, why he needed to go off probably a little bit early on as well, quite soon after his goal. Most trainers would opt not do that. We didn't even discuss it last week, but it was a bit of a topic last week when Nilsson got off in the Ghent game right after he scored. But okay, different game, different season. But just what a goal indeed. And on the Enzima assist, of course, really good pass, or really good move at least. The pass itself, also a little bit of luck, of course, because it took a little deflection before ending up on Scheidler's feet. Nonetheless, he had seen the pass, and the execution was nearly perfect, and that maybe that deflection just made it bounce perfectly for Scheidler to boot it. Though, but okay, I guess a pitch anyway. It would have done that, and okay, a good point for Deinze. I see also with them, I could really see them still struggling a lot this season, but so far they're so good, I guess, and definitely holding up a lot better than their other promoted side, who we'll get to soon as well. Of course, doing better than expected, I guess we could say as well. Anyway, at least that I expected before the season. Whether they can hold on to it or not, that's again something we will have to find out later on. And Scott mentioned 5 games without a win for Anderlecht, 4 points out of those 5. So 4 draws. So okay, they only lost 1, but that doesn't really help them in their situation, of course. The last win in the league is to put that also then in dates was the 17th of August. So 1.5 months ago. Not what you expect from a top side, of course. It's, I guess, also for them a bit luckily that everything is bunched up there and packed in that part of the classification. So they're still, I think technically they're now outside of the top 6, but that's only on goal difference. That's something. At this point stage of the season, we can't really put much value on that. But Dreyer was back now. Like last week he was out, I believe. I think we have to congratulate him. I think he had was out because of fatherhood. But recent fatherhood, but he was back. But was he really? Didn't really see him. Didn't do much. And unfortunately, that's not only going for this game. The whole season, it's a bit, just not good. Just not good at all. Like I believe he got 1 assist now, 0 goals. And the problem with him is a bit if he doesn't contribute, he really doesn't help his team in other ways either. So that's. Defensively, not really, and like in the also not necessarily in attacking play, is a bit too absent apart from what he can do, and we know he can. So maybe it's just a spell, and maybe it gets better for it. At the moment, he I can see why some fans are not happy with him in the side at the moment as well. But also, I fear we also negatively have to highlight Vasquez's misses as well. That there were, he definitely really should have scored. And of course, on the final one, like I think that one of the final touches of the game, Anderlecht did score. The Greef scored, and it was offside. There is a bit unlucky, of course. It is him that was offside, and that on that face so it was disallowed, but. Also a bit typifying his game, his subs appearance there. And on the Kozemans ones also, that was a really weird phase as well, because like he saved that one brilliantly, the header, and then he moved. Then on the following corner, he goes completely through the balls, underneath the ball, and like that would have been. A waste of that save if that would have gone in, and maybe like he should have. It's definitely that's still worth to mention. But of course he's having, of all Anderlecht players, clearly he's having the best season so far. We've talked about that as well. That's not necessarily a good sign. Well, actually, it's most likely a very bad sign for them at the moment.
Yeah, and they've got Real Sociedad this week in the Europa League, who actually aren't having a very decent season themselves, in all honesty, but. You see Real Sociedad, and they're not kind of a side you fancy playing in European football most times, and that's away from home. So we'll see how they get on there. One thing on Arjen Schindler that I found interesting is this is only ever his second season in the top flight of any European football league. He's basically spent most of his time in second tiers of Spain, second tiers of Italy, lower reaches of French football. Played for Dijon for 1 season in Liga, scored 1 goal in 10 games. So his stats are not very exciting. Oh yeah, last year he got relegated with Andorra in the Spanish second tier and scored 5 goals. So I don't know if we're maybe hyping the man up a bit too much beyond his things, or maybe he's just found the right situation in the right place. But he looked pretty good this weekend, so be interested to see how he gets on further on into the season. I think Yoshi mentioned they're doing better than the other promoted side, and I think if we'd said at the beginning of the season that one of the promoted teams would have played 9, won none, drawn 1, and lost 8, we'd be like, that's probably Deinze. They're just not good enough for this league. That's probably what's going to happen. But then Beerschot decided to exist, and their fans before this derby had said, we can't control what everyone does. We're probably, if we're losing, we might not see the game ended. So we all knew that this was going to be a feisty game, and potentially we weren't going to see the end of this one. You then look at the stands and you see a bunch of blokes in balaclavas in the away end, and you're like, well, okay, like this game's not finishing, is it? Like, if they've got those, they've brought in with balaclavas, what else have they brought in? And the answer to that is they brought in quite a few things. So it was ridiculous in that sense. Antwerp were just by far the better team. In that first half, they should have scored so many more. I think I mentioned to you guys, there was just this moment where I think there was a couple of moments. One where Valencia had the best chance of the first half and just completely fluffed it. But there was no one within a million miles of him. Like, he was so open. And then there was another one where Shamanga at left back is pulled out and the left centre back just doesn't follow him and just leaves this massive gap in between the two of them that Cherry was more than happy to waltz into a couple of times. First goal was fantastic finish for Wojciech, but that's just been common all game. And then we have that kind of 3 or 4 minutes of absolute madness where Cherry just hits 2 absolute beauties. Janssen then gets his well-deserved goal. I thought Beerschot could not deal with Janssen at all, like his little layoffs and passes. And yeah, they made him look very mobile, which is not an easy thing to do. And then we had obviously all the flares coming onto the pitch, and you just knew this game wasn't going to end. And hilariously, in the end, instead of losing 4-0, they lose 5-0. Because fair play to the club, they were just like, we're not coming back for these 15 more minutes at the end of the game. We'll forfeit this one. We'll take the fine. And absolute shambles. An absolute shambles on the pitch from Beerschot, an absolute shambles off the pitch from Beerschot. Antwerp fans obviously enjoyed every single minute of it. Saw some very funny kind of comments towards Beerschot fans, some that probably aren't podcasts, probably can't get away with on the podcast without putting the explicit rating on. But then just another word I did want to say to the Beerschot fans who aren't involved in any of this, who they're the people that are kind of the real victims in this whole thing. I saw loads of them being like, this is just lunacy, like these guys need to be kicked out of our club and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully for them this sort of thing can happen, because this isn't the first time, as we said a couple of weeks ago. This is a club that, we saw a lot of games without fans during their final season in the Pro League a couple of years ago, and it's going to happen again this year. And I understand the frustration because the team's crap. They had a lot of the Saudi boys started this week, didn't they, guys? They did finally got their work permits. So there's a lot of kind of Saudi attention on social media on the game. And I think a lot of them quickly realised that their boys have been, drafted into a team that's not good enough, to be honest. So they were also frustrated with the club. So the club got loads of abuse from Antwerp fans, loads of abuse from its own fans, and loads of abuse from Saudi Arabia. So an all-round good day for the Beerschot social media manager.
Oh God, where to start with this one? Well, earlier this week there was a meeting between the Mayor of Antwerp, Bart de Wever, and the Alderman of Antwerp. And on the agenda at that meeting was, will we ban away supporters from this fixture? Because they've come out publicly and said the game will not finish if they're losing. And true to their word, there was an opportunity really to be a bit preemptive about this, particularly with a fan base who've got a bit of a history with this. So I think the Mayor has got a bit of responsibility here, to come out and say, well, we allowed it because it penalised those supporters who are going to behave themselves. I don't think there was too many supporters in that away section, as Ben was saying, who had any intention particularly of behaving. There weren't too many of them that were unmasked, and there weren't too many of them at the end that weren't actually trying to climb the barricades and even get onto the pitch as well. It was all pretty feral stuff, and Beerschot, I'm afraid to say, are a club who have a problem in this sense. There's an issue there. They're not doing enough to address it, and there's a lot they could do, starting with, banning people who are not difficult to identify. The Mayor needs to act on information like that, I think. I think the smart thing to have done would have been to lock out away fans earlier in the week when the meeting was happening. It just would have meant the game would have finished. There would have been less pressure on policing authorities, and the whole thing would have, frankly saved the taxpayer some money as well. Lauren Paris, of course, the CEO at the Pro League, in the aftermath of this game, was saying that, supporters are not allowed to take masks in. So he was having a little pop at the police for not policing the game appropriately and allowing those people into the stadium, and then took that as another opportunity to try and sell everybody the biometric system for access to stadiums, which they want to bring in across the board, of course, the Pro League, which most people aren't happy with, and quite rightly so, because if you follow all the other protective measures that are there, you absolutely don't need this. The cynic in me might say that they're not doing anything about the measures that are already there that would work because they want to bring the biometrics in. That's a question for listeners to ask themselves as well. That's the way politicians tend to work. So, we have the ideal solution here, people. Just let us get on with it. I'm not sure they do, because they're making a bit of an arse of the rules currently as they are. So, yeah, a total mess. On the game itself, Antwerp totally dominated it, and if it had finished, it probably would have been 6, 7 or 8, really. That opening sort of 10 minutes in the second half was entirely played in Beerschot's 18-yard box as well, which was kind of pretty incredible. I thought it was nothing less than slightly miraculous in a way that they'd managed to do that one thing, and that was not concede inside the opening 20 minutes that we've been talking a lot about, but they then went and conceded more than once inside the opening 20 of the second half. So it got slightly farcical in that sense, because they kind of flipped it on its head. I have no idea what's going on inside that club really at the moment. It's having issues with the way it's run. We've talked about that a bit in detail over the last couple of weeks. But just watching this game as well, I was thinking, what's the game plan? Tactically, what's going on here? Individually, nobody knew what they looked like they were doing. And as a collective, nobody had any idea really either. The whole thing just is utterly rudderless. And the club's probably going to get hammered now, deservedly so. Yet again, find themselves without fans at away games, deservedly so. Maybe, just maybe, their form will improve when they don't have any supporters in their ground. And they might decide, you know what, we'll play without anybody most weeks.
Maybe that's a good thing as well. That I think you guys said a lot already, so I don't think I will touch too much on it. They got a fine of 50k and they got a forfeit, which is not enough as a punishment. Obviously, they might have lost more than a forfeit as well. My main thing here was, and it's a sad thing to say, but I was actually surprised that it only happened that late. I expected it, with all things considered, I would have expected it latest after the 2-0. Okay, granted, there was not much time between the 2 and the 4-0, but I'll stick more to the game nonetheless, I suppose. Yeah, Antwerp playing quite well. I feel a bit sad for Sherry, I suppose his goals are taken away then with the forfeited game. He had 2 great strikes again. And not only him, they were actually dangerous from distance anyway. They scored 3 of their 4 from distance. The first 3, if I'm not mistaken, even. So, definitely a danger from distance. And they started the season really well. And by that doing so, they did go joint seconds after the weekend as well. Definitely a good thing for them. On Beerschot, I guess the one thing is Al Ghamdi, one of the Saudi players, actually had probably their best chance in the first half. That's a hooray for the Saudi fans, but that I don't think there's anything that's I don't want to say much good about them anyway. I guess that already said too much there. What's happening there? Everyone knew they would be sucking this season, to be honest. I'm not completely agree with what Benzo was saying before, where it's like, if you had to pick a side from the promoted sides who would start this bad, okay, it would have been a toss coin, I guess, a coin toss, I guess. But for me, that I would probably still have gotten have bet on Beerschot, because their squad is so thin. There were just no investments being made. I mean, this is all quite predictable. I mean, it's not great, but I mean, as a fan, you also feel that. You probably feel that even more than we do, because you're more closely to, you see that not enough is happening around the club. I mean, yes, and you will go down. Okay, we can already say that now, probably with 99.99% certainty. But I mean, even that is not the end of the world. It's be mad at of course, at the club, that I can get, but like, this is not gonna help that in any way. Okay, and then the one funny moment that I'm not sure if it's worth mentioning, if that part is worth or like is allowed to mention in the podcast, but there's a very funny image. Footage, or a very funny footage of an Antwerp fan, where they see in the preview of the game in the news, he just puked on the kid, and the kid was laughing about it afterwards. no way to put it more discreet. So there you go.
He was sick of the sight of Beerschot already. That was the problem he had. Yeah, I think there was a really hilarious thing that came out this week from our good friend Glenn de Bock. I'm not sure if he was wearing his city coat as well, the shiny coat, but he was talking about he was like, oh yeah, I offered Beerschot 2 teenage African strikers and they didn't take them. There's no direction at this club, blah, 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 something, which is obviously a bit weird anyway. Like, why would they just take players from Glenn de Bock, just telling them that they're better than like Yaya Toure and people like that? But he did make a really interesting point. He's like, that club's had no direction for years. There's no idea. No one's really got any kind of clear handle of what they want to be and what's going on. And I think that is clear. I mean, it has nothing to do with them not signing players that he wants them to sign. That's a bit weird. But it's been clear
what is Glenn de Bock doing with young African boys? I have a feeling this podcast is taking a very weird turn, but I do take responsibility for that.
Yeah, you can own that one. It's just a bit weird. It was just the weirdest thing I've ever read. Like, where's he found these kids? Like, why is he offering players? Like, I was equally baffled. But his point about them having no direction, I was like, yeah, that actually stands. A side that have been equally pretty poor in recent weeks are Kortrijk. We mentioned last week about Freya Alexanderson. Scott found a quite hilarious picture of a very angry man from Kortrijk who looks very angry with Freya Alexanderson, who's kind of holding his hands up to be like, what? Trying to explain what happened against Union. They lose 3-0, and I found like Union did have this result coming in the sense of like they against it was Fenerbahce, wasn't it, that they played in Europe, where they dominated that first half and they just need to put their chances away, but they just didn't. They took some of their chances in this game. I mean, they had loads of chances, but they at least took some of them, and João Silva at least held them out with the one, and he was like, yeah, here you go, I'll give you the own goal. It's another poor result for Kortrijk. Good one for Union in the sense that they finally put some football in the back of the net, which they've been needing to do for a long, long time. But maybe it's the turnaround for their season, or do we think this was just they're playing Kortrijk and Kortrijk aren't very good at the moment?
Well, interesting one, because could you feel the relief in Brussels? I mean, Union scoreless in their last 4. And their first win in 5. My God, that was needed. I mean, we're talking about a side here that everybody will know has been extraordinarily consistent for 3 years at least now. So the run of form that they were on was, by their own standards and context, pretty catastrophic stuff. So they needed something domestically to steady the ship, and a good performance. And they followed up, a pretty decent performance in Europe in the whole, with a really solid win. They got some goals as well and kept a clean sheet, so it doesn't get much better than that. We mentioned Matty Freegan earlier, and his performance probably being one of the performances of the weekend. There was another performance in this game that I thought was, probably up there actually in terms of being one of the standouts of the weekend. Franjo Ivanovic, who has been, threatening to break out to be a bit of a player, now looks like, he absolutely could be. He's been slowly warming up, and he could be their best signing of the summer at Union. That's something definitely to keep an eye on. Kortrijk, exceptionally poor, as Ben was saying. Poor Freyr Alexanderson had to placate the away fans after the game, who were very irate, and they're now winless in 6, and in those last 6 they've only scored 3 goals, so they've slipped right back into the output levels and the sorts of performance levels that they had for the majority of last season. And this whole thing that was going on recently with, is he going to Cardiff, is he not, I just wonder, has that sucked any positivity that was inside the club up to that point out? Because although the malaise was kind of starting before that anyway, it just seems to really have hit a brick wall now, and the fan base are starting to get quite irate.
Yep, they definitely do, and these things definitely do not help when the results are not coming and when you're already struggling a little bit. And I fear that the walls are crashing down. Yes, definitely looking worse and worse again. Not only that you can lose a game against Union, you can even lose big time against Union, but an Union side that's still struggling as well, at least in certain aspects of their game. Already a bit less likely, but like just the level of play was it was non-existent from Kortrijk's side, I guess. And also, I'm a bit tired of Alexanderson saying like, after the game in his post-match, like, yes, we should have. This was not a good game from us, and admitting that the defeat was correct. Okay, in this specific case, I'm not sure if he could have said anything else, but yeah. It's his task to find solutions, of course, as well. And we know he's capable. He should be capable of that. He's shown that last season, but we'll really. At least things need to improve, and quite drastically and quite urgently as well. I don't know how everything is going to pan out there. It's a very weird story. Either way, I don't see him staying very long at Kortrijk anymore, to be fair. If it's his decision or the club's decision in the end because of the results, we'll see. But personally, I do feel indeed that there's a bit more to that than so far the outside world we see. I think around Kortrijk, indeed, the atmosphere is a bit more. There's a little more tension than we might see from the outside. But on Union, to go to a bit of a positives. Yeah, I'm sorry, Kortrijk, that there is not much positive this time for you anyway. Except this was a game you lost, so next game you get a point or you win again. That's still a pattern that's going on. But I'm tired of myself saying these things already in the past few weeks, so I hope it ends. But but Union, of course, yes, breaking their non-scoring streak indeed. Ivanovic getting his first, definitely very important, I think, because he really looks like a player, but yes, his finishing has not always been on point yet. Even in this game, he probably should have scored more, but he's creating a lot and constantly moving, so I think he's a really good pickup for them. If he can provide the goods, then maybe this will really start their season off. And again, one of those sides, they pick up a win and they move up the table. I think even last week, I think I messaged you guys in the chat, like, I hope they scored in this game against Kortrijk. Otherwise, they might really be sucked into the relegation zone for now. So not really important, but still, now they win one game and things are looking a lot brighter. 3 points behind second spot. I mean, maybe it's not too late for them this season to kick off and then improve their defense. Well, I don't know if it's worth much against this opponent, but it did well, and has been doing well and generally holding up across the whole season so far. So not that good stuff for them, and a much needed win, a convincing win, even if they maybe should have won it with even more than they did now. But they will take this one, a nice confidence boost before their next European fixture, and of course the next league fixtures coming up as well.
It's interesting. Their defense hasn't been anywhere near as bad, has it, compared to kind of other teams? So it is just finding those goals. But 3-0, you'd take it. And yeah, Bodo Glimt next, which, I mean, that's a really, really tough game. Really, really tough. I don't know if people kind of followed when Bodo Glimt blew up, I guess you could say, when they really started to dominate Norwegian football. All the players they had that then got sold, and they're all basically back there. So they just kind of sold these guys, built a squad, and then added these guys back in. So they're a ridiculously good team. So I think it's going to be a really tough one. They haven't got Boniface back yet, but that's pretty good that they haven't got him back, because that'd be quite terrifying. Yeah, the Alexanderson thing, like I completely agree. I think there's so much more to it, and I feel like you can you lose the fan base and you lose the players very quickly if they don't think you're committed to it and stuff like that. And yeah, anyone who's listening who also is an unfortunate, now long-suffering Reading fan like myself, we're reminded of Steve Clarke, who was offered the Fulham job. And he goes, and we've started the season fantastically. We're kind of like looking like a team that could probably get promoted from the Championship. Steve Clarke's gone and played incredible football. He gets offered the Fulham job. He goes, speaks to them, comes back and says, actually, I didn't want it. But the fact that he went and spoke to them was enough that the whole kind of season just came crashing down. Thing completely fell apart. And then we were back to kind of like square one again the next season, kind of trying to rebuild and do stuff like that, because the players just lost confidence in him. The fan base completely lost confidence in him, because they're like, we don't care necessarily. Like, I think fan bases of lots of clubs, we understand that if you get offered a better job, you will probably go. Like, we can completely understand that. But when you're it looks like you're shopping for that, that's when we start to lose confidence in you, because we're like, oh, well, you were kind of flirting with that one, but that wasn't the right one. So now you're going to come back to us and we're second best. Like, we'd rather you just left. Although I don't think the Cardiff job's the one you want. Like, they're absolutely dire this season. But I'm sure financially it's a little bit better than Kortrijk. In the Vincent Tan kind of business structure, I guess that the manager of Cardiff is higher paid than the manager of Kortrijk. But yeah, we'll see. Another side joint owned by an English side in Leuven. Obviously, they lost 3-0 again. Game pretty much felt like it was done and dusted within those first 15 minutes. Max Dean with a really nice finish. Verdiga's goal's hilarious. Poor Akamoto gets absolutely twisted in all places. I think I remember when I came back from that game I saw Ghent live, I was like, I think Verdiga's better than Sam was. I think he offers more going forward. And he never really did anything with it. But then he did this, and I was like, there we go. That's what I predicted clearly all those months ago. Leuven had lots of the ball. They created chances, but they can't score anything because they just don't want to play the strikers that they've got. I don't know if you guys, I know, Scott, you are Mr. Body Language, but Mikael Biron does not look like he's very happy. He doesn't look like he wants to be in Leuven. I don't know if he ever wanted to be in Leuven, to be honest. Like, compared to the Molenbeek version of him we saw, where he looked quite happy. Like, yes, they were doing quite badly, but he looked quite comfortable in the surroundings. He looked like he knew exactly what he needed to do. He looked like he got on with the rest of the squad as well. Like, he looked more integrated, whereas in this game, I just was watching him. I was like, there was like a chance over the top, I think, where he just needed to get his foot to it. And he didn't, but he just looked really kind of like miserable and a bit fed up, which you can probably understand when you're stuck on the bench and watching Matthew Mertens play up front, who's not a striker. Like, this is not his game. He's in behind in the attacking midfield role. But yeah, David Ruth made a couple more saves, all that sort of thing. Gudjonsson scored as well. So for Ghent, it was a nice little win. But for Leuven, it's the same old. We can just repeat it all season. But they've got the strikers now. It's just Garcia clearly doesn't rate them.
Yeah, well, the Buffaloes were convincing after a midweek misfire against Cercle. Really strong. I mean, that opening 13 minutes, most of the work was done there. You know, they raced into a 2-goal lead. Interesting to hear Matthias Delorge saying that he felt they had some making up to do after that midweek loss at the Ambridal to Cercle. I kind of was intrigued by that. I wish he'd said a little bit more. I didn't disagree with him. Leuven, on the other hand, Tommy Layson being equally honest post-match when he said, look, we were never in it. Even though the first 13 minutes were awful and that's when the game was won, he said we were never really, competitive enough in all the right ways. I think Ben's right. I think they did have some chances, which they definitely could have made more of. But just a general off day for them. On the Byron thing, it's a bit weird because we know this is a player who can be a handful, who can score goals. So I don't know whether there's an attitude problem in training or whatever, or he doesn't get on with Garcia. What's going on behind the scenes there? But it just seems odd that he's not been given more of an opportunity when we know that he's actually not a bad player and he could be useful. So it's all just a bit odd, and I think he's just kind of throwing his toys out of the pram and sulking a bit, which, for somebody in his situation, I can kind of understand, but he's not approaching it in a particularly constructive way because there's not much chance of him getting back into that side with any regularity, if he continues with that sort of attitude. So I can see him going out in January if the situation doesn't change for him. It's very, very odd, that one, because when he came in, I thought, oh, that's interesting, that's quite a good pickup, but, maybe Ben's right, maybe he never wanted to go, and they never wanted him in the first place, and that this was one of those deals that was really more about other people rather than the player concerned.
Very much possible, because yes, that was also one of the things I wrote down that baffled me a bit. Like they finally got some striker options in there, and ultimately it's Martens playing as the main striker. Well, that does completely make no sense to me on face value, at least. But yeah, there might be more to it. Of course, we don't know the specific cases, but yeah, still strange. Okay. Indeed, Gent bouncing back after the midweek disappointment against Cercle. Yeah, that was a really bad game from both sides, but especially from Gent, to be fair. Indeed, so I think they indeed needed that. They are also now in a good position in second spot, or joint second as well. But I'm not completely convinced with them as well still. So again, something that can be a good thing or a bad thing, whatever things change, of course. But in this game, they really they deserved to win and played well, of course. Helped with the fact that they scored their two first chances, of course, as well, in the first 13 minutes, I believe. That second one from Fadiga already was in the 13th minute. Really nice goal. Probably shouldn't go in. Okay, that's a little bit of a critique, but not much. It was a rocket, but it still was a first post. So yeah, but nonetheless, that put them where they needed to be. Dean scoring again, of course, if he can get scoring, and indeed you mentioned it as well, both strikers actually scoring as well. That does help. Fadiga was his third goal of the season already as well. He's at the moment their joint top scorer together with that man Gandelman. So their strikers still need to keep up with both of those. Of course, maybe a little competition between them can help as well for getting those goals that they need, and they did, and those they did get in a few of the last three games. Actually, they have been very efficient. Okay, at least in the beginning of the game in this case, but that was enough. On Leuven, starting to get a little bit more worried once again. Only 1 point out of their last three games. Okay, this one I think they would not calculate as like a winnable game necessarily, or maybe a winnable game, but more like a surprise nonetheless, if they can manage something. But those three games also include Sint-Truiden and Kortrijk, who both are not in the best of forms. One of the sides, one side, at least when they faced them, were not in the best forms. When one slide is slipping down, it is worrying, together with that fact of Martens playing as a striker. Can't get my head around it at the moment yet, either. Just poor performance from them, and they seem to be, like many sides, seem to be topsy-turvy again. Like 1 week they're actually performing quite well. This week it was not nothing, but it was definitely not good enough nonetheless. Don't know what to make of it at the moment. Like with many sides in the middle of the pack, it's like we predicted them this season, before the season, but it could go that we for once predicted many things quite right, because their seasons are more or less similar to last season, or we completely didn't, and we'll figure out. Well, everyone will figure out in the next 2 months what kind of good predictors we are.
Yeah, probably not the best. I don't know though. I think the things we pick up on are true. I think it's just the impact that then has on the team is maybe not always the case. Yeah, a strange, but back to Ghent just kind of quickly. Frank Serdes picking up his 5th assist. I think he's really come to the fore as one of those signings that came in January. which is nice. They've just got the small matter of Chelsea on Thursday, so a nice, comfortable European clash for them. Chelsea, obviously, Conference League novices. Like, Ghent have all the experience going into this one, so they should absolutely wipe the floor with them. But Ganderman getting injured in the warm-up against Cercle, I haven't seen if he's going to be back or not. He obviously wasn't there on Sunday, so yeah, could do with him back. But Max Dean, it feels like a game made for him to score and then like just piss off the I can't remember the end, one of the ends. Is it the Shed? I'm sure he'll piss off all the Chelsea fans. I'm sure he will. But anyway, let's go to Cercle, who beat Ghent obviously to get kind of hopefully kickstart their season. Maybe Kevin Denke scored again in this one against St Truden, but sucker punch at the end. Well, maybe a sucker punch. I don't know. I think St Truden probably did enough to grab a point. Really nice pass from Brahimi to Ferrari coming off the bench, who he had the freedom of the Amber Idol to put that one in. No one really following the run. There was one instance where Zari Salam looked like he'd actually scored the equaliser earlier when he out-jumped Vardason, and I was like, oh, here we go, another goalkeeper not jumping. But he put his hand on him, and it's like, if you put your hand on the goalkeeper, you're never really going to get away with it. If he hadn't, he looked a legitimate goal, and it should have been fine. But yeah, he put his hand down on the goalkeeper, and you're never going to get away with that one. So I think, yeah, frustration again for Cercle in the sense that they've kind of not kicked on. Like, if they got back-to-back wins, you'd feel like, okay, they're pushed in the right direction. But this is a little bit more frustrating. Whereas for St Truden, the Mazu impact is still happening, and maybe we're reintroducing Mazu time. Who knows? After this one and that late goal against Leuven, is he back at his kind of tinkering, last-minute, decisive entertainment best?
Well, Felice is certainly staying true to his word, insofar as, you know, he's bringing out all of his old tricks, if you like. I've noticed as well that the 3 games under him so far, he's started with the same 11. So he's doing that thing that he likes to do where, you know, if he gets a positive start with a group of players, he will stick with them. So for anybody who's not been in the side yet, you know, as long as they continue to perform reasonably well, and obviously this squad's a bit different to some of the other ones he's had, there's not much chance of you getting a look in, really, in truth, you know, the way that he manages his squads in that sense. 7 out of 9 so far, can't really argue with that. It's all going according to plan. They just need to kind of keep going, really, which obviously will be very much the message to them there. I think they probably did deserve a point on balance. The equaliser is a source of huge frustration to Miran Muslic. He wanted to talk about this afterwards. He said for him, that goal is simply down to concentration, and when you see it, you'll see exactly what he means. The pass from Brahimi is admittedly brilliant, but if the defence tracks that run, it's not a goal, you know, so it's just switching off, you know, right at the end of the game, and ultimately they're punished for it, and that's just, you know, really difficult to take when you're kind of, you know, struggling a bit. The Cercle have been in recent weeks really to kind of get their season going properly, because they looked like they were good for their second win within a few days, but, you know, sucker punch there. So he's frustrated and disappointed about that. Another problem Cercle have got now is we know that Thibaut Summers and Agyacum are now out for several weeks. Summers in particular is going to be a really serious loss to them. You know, we know Mr. Cercle, as some people refer to him, you know, how important he is. He's been one of the few players so far this season that has been performing to a good level since the start of the season. So he's going to be a big loss, and there's, you know, a couple of headaches there for Muslic now to kind of grapple with, and you know, he didn't have his problems to seek. He had a lot of things to try and work out, and that's just thrown another problem into his selection mix, because there's been a degree of rotation, you know, trying to find the right balance and the right mix as well in there, and that's going to do nothing to help that. Kevin Denke now has 3 and 2 after being benched during the week, so a bit of a tactical man management masterclass, if you like, from Miron there. He said he knows Kevin very well now, having worked with him for 3 years, and he knows how he responds to sort of a bit of adversity, and I think that sort of proverbial kick up the arse by benching him during the week and then allowing him to come on for the last 15 and go and win the game for them worked a treat, and you know, his season is kind of, you know, well and truly up and running in a lot of ways, you might say now. The other thing from a Cercle perspective is one other player worthy of a shout who is still performing to the level that you would want him to, and that's Christian Ravic. You know, he's arguably the one defender who's kind of still on it. He was quite honest post-match. He said, look, offensively, we're nowhere near as good as we have been and we can be. And he said our pressing, which is one of the best aspects of Cerkel's game, again, has just not been right. And I think we've seen that since the start of the season. I think their pressing has been not there at all. And I wasn't sure whether they were deliberately trying to mix up their playing style a wee bit, and was this a deliberate thing where they were moving a bit away from the intense press to a more open, expansive passing game? And I'm still in two minds as to whether that's a deliberate thing or not. But hearing Christian Ravic come out and openly admit that it's not kind of answers my own question, I suppose. St Truiden will be delighted. They've got Ghent coming up next at home, and then the big Limburg derby, which on the form that they're showing at the moment and the form that Torsten thinks Genk are showing should be as spicy a game as it always is.
I would say the opposite thing as Ravic, to be honest. I think their main issue is their defense, and I have numbers for that. No clean sheets for Wirelesson in 12 games now. Last year we got 12 clean sheets, which is the main difference with that season now, especially since Denki is now finally scoring and Somers contributed as well, of course. These are, of course, the very bare numbers. I'm sure there's underlying stats we can also see indeed that it's not only defensively that at least that they are struggling a bit. But yeah, good for them that Denki is finally scoring again 5 goals now, so it's really... almost top scorer already as well. Again, maybe he can keep it up, and that will be a big help for them. That main thing, 0 clean sheets, and now two games this week, and they conceded twice in the final minutes. Okay, against Ghent, it was not of very much importance, but still, I think they might be chasing that clean sheet a bit too much now as well. And that must indeed be very frustrating for Muslic, of course, especially since this time it really costs them a few points as well. Arguably, I have to say that for me, that's still one of the weirdest decisions that Zaire Slam goal was disallowed of the whole season so far. Muslic also said it himself in his post-match. That for me, that's a goal. I would be furious if that would happen against, if I would be the manager of the other side, if that would happen against my side. There's really nothing in there. I mean, that just should count. I know there might be a slight touch, but you can't avoid any contact. And I know goalkeepers are protected, but in this case, Warleson was not getting there anyway, so that's the main thing for me. If he would have been otherwise holding the ball and make sure that he got it, then yes, okay. That this is not a case of kicking the ball out of somewhere or going very hard in a duel with the goalkeeper or anything. None of those things. So that could be crucial, of course, at the end of the season. I think that's one of those underlying things. I think there was against Dender against Sint-Truiden, but then so for Dender against Sint-Truiden, there was also some case like that, different case, but there was just because it's a smaller site, we might not remember. I'm trying my best to remember it a little bit, but okay, ultimately it's not going to change anything, of course, on the outcome of the whole season. But interesting to follow up a little bit how that goes. Trademark Mazu has been sent already as well, scoring in the final minutes, and it's not the first time already in this very short term back at Sint-Truiden. So I guess, when that Limburg derby comes, there's an international break in between there, I think. But both sides like to score in the final minutes, so we can just switch on the TV after 75 minutes. I guess you can miss everything else before that, potentially. There's always a risk that the game is already decided in one way or another, of course, in that case. But, well, that's your own risk. Ferrari getting his first goal, that might be good, and that might maybe change that whole dynamic of starting the whole same 11 all the time as well. Slowly, I don't know. I don't think it's enough at the moment, but yeah, he is definitely pitching in, and that's something they need from everyone. Even though they started well under Mazu now, of course, but in the situation they're still in.
Yeah, no, definitely. For Circle, they host Swiss side St Gallen in European football coming up. So yeah, the games are coming quick and fast without some players, so it's going to be tricky. Former Pro League man Bastien Thomas will make a little comeback to Belgium with St Gallen. He's leading them with 3 assists at the moment. They're doing all right in the Swiss League. 1-4, lost 3. Trying to think of any other notable players that people might know. They got Ante Zigi in goal, Ghanaian international goalkeeper. If people watch Africa Cup of Nations, he's usually the guy in between the sticks for Ghana at the moment. But yeah, that should be an interesting one to watch on Thursday. I'm so confused as to when matches are on in this European thing now. I think it's Thursday. We'll find out. It'll happen when it happens. Before we leave, let's quickly go to the Challenger. Scott, do you want to run us through the results and then talk to us about breakfasts and company cars? Because that's kind of a theme of today's news, isn't it?
Yeah. More on that in a second. Matchday 6 in the Challenger Pro League. What happened this weekend? Well, Molenbeek beat Frank Moran. Eupen beat Jonggenk 3-1. Club Next beat Beveren 2-0. Lokeren and Deinze played out a spectacular 0-0 draw. Lommel and Liège finished 1 apiece. Serang lost the local Liège derby against RFC Liège convincingly 3-0. Anderlecht and Zulte Waregem brought the goals, Zulte winning 3-2 in the end against Anderlecht Futures, and Raal losing 2-0 at home to Patra Eisden, which leaves Molenbeek still top. 5 straight wins for them now. They're kind of slipping into a sort of cruise control, which will be a delight for their fans. Zulte are now up to second after 4 straight wins, and down at the bottom, propping up the basement, is Anderlecht Futures, who are really struggling at the moment. The top scorer, jointly, Patra Eisden's Keanu van Raffelem, who we mentioned, I think it was either last week or the week before, and Kay Furo, who got a good shout out a couple of weeks ago from us, 17-year-old Club Next striker, scoring again this weekend, also is now on 5, and his goal this weekend was a bit of a cracker, actually. We can criticise the Beveren defence for doing absolutely nothing to help themselves, but he had it all to do, and he did it, a great solo goal. And yeah, Ben mentioned cars and breakfast. Most people will probably have an inkling of Deinze's ongoing financial problems. Well, it's now been confirmed that the cutbacks are starting to kick in properly because the players have been told that the cars provided for them are being withdrawn, and the club will no longer be providing them with breakfast. So they'll have to have their muesli and fruit before they come in for training at home in the morning.
Are they just going to start flogging all those cars? Is that what's going to happen? Like, we're just going to see loads of I hope they haven't got Deinze splattered all over the side of them. I hope there's some resale value in them. No, definitely worrying times, isn't it? When because they came out and denied, they're like, no, don't listen to that stuff in the press. It's fine. We're just looking for some investors. Whereas now, yeah. That's kind of like a telltale sign. I know it's only breakfast and it's cars, and do the players need cars anyway? In that sense, I'm sure they can all afford cars by themselves. They don't need to be given cars. So it seems a bit of a random lavish expense they probably didn't need to be providing anyway. But the breakfast one's a bit weird because you feel like within a professional football setup, you want to have a little bit of control over kind of nutrition and stuff like that because. Yeah, not everyone knows what they're doing when it comes to that sort of stuff, which is fair enough.
Well,
it's not easy.
Most important,
Exactly. Someone once said it's a free hit. That's what I heard. A cricket commentator once says breakfast's a free hit because you're probably going to burn those calories up anyway during the day. But as a footballer, that's especially going to happen. But I think you need to be putting the right stuff into your body in the first place. But yeah, we'll keep our kind of eyes and ears on the evolving story that is Deinze. Ironic, you've got them and Patra, who we've spoken about before, Patra Eisden. They're obviously both in the top kind of 6 at the moment. So it's quite weird. It could be a very weird continuation of the season, depending on how those guys get on in terms of what happens and stuff. Because we know there was concern last year if one of those went up, or especially Patra. If Patra went up, there was already kind of clubs were turning to the legal side of things to kind of potentially challenge that sort of stuff. So it will be interesting to see, but fingers crossed if either it gets sorted out or they're nowhere near promotion, so we don't have to worry about it come the end of the season. But yeah, as always, some good stuff going on in the Challenger, some good goals this weekend as well. Yellow Vossen still scoring, which is just hilarious. The man just, he loves it. He's closing on some great records for Zorta Vargem at the moment as well. And his picture on Google, if you search the Challenger Pro League, is hilarious because it looks like someone's just taken a picture of him next to a random bus in Belgium from a very, very long time ago. He's barely recognisable from like the early 2000s. Very strange. Anyway, that does it for this week's episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. Obviously, we'll have European football to talk about next week as well. And all the kind of fallout from the Antwerp derby, potentially what's going to happen to Beerschot on that. We'll see. Maybe they'll win next week. Who knows? I doubt it very, very much. Guys, as always, it's been a pleasure joining you for this one.
It has indeed. And whatever you're up to over the next few days, have a great week, everybody.
Same to you.
Absolutely, yeah. Enjoy this week of football. Enjoy this week of non-football if that's not what you're doing. Just enjoy the week. If you like what we do, leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. You can also donate to us at Buy Me a Coffee. I think I said donate me a coffee last week, so I hope no one's been sending money into the ether of whatever website that is. It's probably a scam. But yeah, if you do like what we do, please do feel free to do that. We love making it. We'll continue to make this podcast, but yeah, it's always nice to kind of help us cover a couple of costs to make it even better than it is at the moment. Thanks once again for listening, and we'll speak to you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.